Hey everybody, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2022 Toyota 4Runner, we're going to be showing you how to install the Westin HDX running boards. But before we do that, why don't we check these out and make sure that this is the right set for you. So when it comes to putting a running board or a Nerf bar on your Toyota, whatever you want to call them, you know, it can get a little overwhelming. There's just so many different options out there. And when it comes to these, you know, I think it's a really good fit actually. I really like the appearance of it. Kind of has that tough off-road look to it, so it really fits in well with the 4Runner, at least in my opinion. And you know, that's not the case for all vehicles. You know, if you were to put these on a minivan or a luxury SUV or something like that, it probably really wouldn't look that good, right? So as far as the appearance goes, I think it's a good fit for it, for sure. But granted, that's all you know, opinion as well. You know, what I think looks good on something, someone else might not like. So, but with that said, you know, it's not always about the appearance either. It's, you know, you want something that's going to be functional as well. With that said, you know, these 4Runners actually do sit up pretty high. And so it's nice to have a big step here available to help get you in and out of your Toyota. As far as what you actually have to work with, the step pad is going to be 4 inches wide. And honestly, I feel like you get a little bit more than that too, because you kind of have this empty space behind there, which kind of gives your foot a little more room to work. So it's actually usable. That's not the case with all running boards and Nerf bars. You know, they might look like they can help, but you just don't hardly have any space to actually get your foot up there. The parts here, these are metal, and they have some dimples in them, some craters, and give you a little bit more traction, maybe help kind of get the snow and mud and everything else off your boots. But with that said, you know, let's go ahead and try them out. I'm wearing size 11 boots, so, you know, they take up some room, definitely. And when I stand on this, I still have quite a bit of space there. So even if you got a huge foot, you know, you're going to be able to get your whole boot on it. And, I mean, I'm putting a lot of weight on this. They're not budging. They're actually pretty solid. I've been on some like tube type steps where, you know, they're a little dicey, you kind of feel some movement in them, and not the case at all with these. So, you know, pretty straightforward as far as getting in. Same deal getting out. And these are going to run all the way from the front to the back, which is good. You know, you don't want to forget about the kiddos or your friends. And having a step back here is going to give them a good spot to help get in and out of your 4Runner. So these are going to be made from stainless steel, which is definitely a good thing. You know, especially since the fact that these Toyotas just run forever. I'm sure a lot of you have seen, you know, pulled up into the parking lot next to an old truck with those rusted out, nasty looking Nerf bars. And that's not going to be the case with these since they are stainless. If you do want to save a few bucks though, there are some identical to this that are just regular steel. I believe the pads are black too. So if you're really not worried about that and just kind of like the look of the other ones a little bit better, that's definitely always an option for you as well. So just figured we kind of take a closer look at these. You know, they're really solid, has this powder coated finish, and actually these are really well built, believe it or not. I feel like it's really hit or miss when it comes to Nerf bars and running boards. Some of them are just kind of junk, I'm not gonna lie. And then you kind of have the complete opposite end. You have some that are really nice. You really don't see too many that kind of fall in the middle there. And you know, these are definitely on the nicer end. Everything fit together really well. They didn't come all beat up and scratched up and everything like that. So you know, solid Nerf bar. I definitely wouldn't hesitate to put these on my own vehicle. But other than that, at the end of the day, you know, you can't really ask for too much more. I think these look good and they function just as well. As far as the installation goes, arguably probably one of the easiest ones that I've done. I've done quite a few of these. Essentially, you just take some factory bolts out, bolt up your brackets, and bolt the Nerf bars to the brackets. So really straightforward. They fit really nice and really shouldn't give you a whole lot of trouble. But if you'd like to stick around and see how these get installed, feel free to. We'll go ahead and knock them out together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here on the side of our 4Runner, and what we're going to need to do is mount up our brackets. So there's going to be a total of 3 of them. You have one up here towards the front, middle, and back. And so I like to kind of lay them all out. And we'll kind of go through these one by one here, but why don't we go ahead and start with the front. So this is what the front bracket is going to look like. It's going to look a little different than the others. So you're going to have 2 of these, obviously one for each side of her car. But with that said, to get it bolted up, we need to go right underneath our pinch weld here. So if we look, we're going to have some factory hardware. 2 bolts, we need to pull them out. So we'll do that using a 12mm socket. So once those are out, chances are pretty good the threads in those holes are going to be clean since there's bolts in them, but if not, you can always clean them out using a toothbrush like this. You can spray some silicone or some penetrating oil in there if you need to. Ours are really clean, pretty much brand new, so not really going to worry about it. But what you're going to do, the front bracket is going to bolt up like this. All right, and the bolts that you're going to use will be these bolts here. So you're going to get this off here so I can show you. You're going to take the bolt, the split lock washer, and a flat washer. And this is the hardware that we're going to use for all of our attachment points, with the exception of the front brackets when we go to actually bolt the running board on. And we'll get to that in a minute, but just pay attention to that. Make sure you have the longer bolts and not the 4 short ones. But that said, what I like to do is just kind of get these started hand tight. Moving on to the middle attachment point. The middle attachment point as well as the rear attachment point are going to be identical. Brackets are going to be the same and everything else. But just like the front, we're going to pull out these 2 bolts. We're going to take our bracket and that hardware that we talked about, get it started hand tight as well. Then I'm going to repeat this exact same process for our rearmost attachment point. So I went ahead and got the rearmost bracket in place. Like I said, it was the exact same setup as the bracket in the middle, but I at least wanted to give you guys a visual. But with now all these brackets loosely installed, we can grab our running board and do a little prep work to it to get it ready to get bolted up. So if we grab our running board, obviously we're going to have our attachment points, and sometimes what can happen is a powder coating can get kind of built up in the threads. So what I suggest doing is cleaning them out. So I'm actually using one of the factory bolts that we took out, and that's because these are kind of a thread cutting bolt, so they should work pretty good. But what I'm going to do is just feed them in, and try to do this by hand. You want to make sure you're not going to cross thread it or anything, but so that one's pretty tight and kind of punch through, and it should make it easier to put everything together. So I'm just going to go through our attachment points and get these threads cleaned out. So I kind of talked about those shorter bolts, and we're going to be using those here at our front attachment point. And the reason being, this plate here is so close to the outside of our running board. If you try to use the longer bolt, you can see it's a little bit longer, it'll hit that and not let you bottom it out. So be sure to use the shorter ones for these holes here in the front. But with that said, we can get this lifted up, the whole running board, onto our brackets and get it bolted up. So we'll go ahead and get this done. If you need a friend to give you a hand, might not be a bad idea. I think we can swing this though. But we'll get it close and then just get some of our bolts started. And again, with these, I'm just gonna get them all started hand tight. So with all the hardware in place and hand tight, you can adjust your running board if you want to. You can push it up or down or left and right. I kind of just center it, and then in our case, I pulled mine all the way down. Not really a huge difference, just kind of whatever you prefer. But once you have it where you want it, you can start to tighten the bolts. I like to start in the middle and work my way out. And I like to start with the bolts that are actually holding the running board to the bracket first. That's just my preferred way. I'm sure other ways are fine to do, but this is how I like to do it. So go ahead and get all these snug and get them rained down. But once you have the driver's side all tightened down and everything, you're simply just going to repeat that exact same process to get the one on the passenger side done. Once the bolts are tight, you want to make sure that they're properly torqued down. So there is a spec in your instructions. I'm going to use a torque wrench to do that. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can always grab one here at etrailer, or a lot of times if you go to your local auto parts store, they'll have one there available to rent. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Westin HDX running boards on our 2022 Toyota 4Runner.